Well, I might have some help on Monday. If I do get that help, the only way that Alycia Bollinger is going to have out of this is to either come forward with the truth or outright falsely accuse me of crimes I didn't commit. The fact is, I have enough evidence for multiple convictions as long as I can get some help forcing law enforcement to take a look at it. And I may have that help on Monday. I have screenshots from Facebook groups, from the Bollingers, from their friends and contacts who were harassing, threatening, and intimidating me. The police have evidence of their wrongdoing, and although alone, their so-called evidence makes me look like a bad guy, the testimony of the witnesses that I have recorded shows that those officers lied. Makes perfect sense why there was so much invested in covering it up. I can connect all of the Bollingers to many of the people who were threatening myself, and some of the witnesses who were too afraid to come out because of it. Those videos that I recorded, they show that many of the witnesses were too afraid to come forward. Now, the evidence that I had in the phones that were stolen, that evidence, by refusing to take a look at it, police officers from Amanda Jonas to Brian Valenzuela to Officer Burke, and even the hospitals that I was in, took part in preventing that evidence from coming forward, as well as public pretenders not doing their jobs, going out of their way to ignore the abuse that I was telling them about and trying to get something done about, as well as the witnesses from the jails, several of whom gave me their numbers for when I got out of jail so that I could contact them. The fact is, Alycia Bollinger is not the victim here. The police did the illegal and immoral things that they did. First of all, because they were hiding their own wrongdoing in many cases. Second of all, because of the blue line of bullshit many of these officers were trying to cover for their friends and coworkers. And many of them were just simply afraid of losing their jobs if they did their jobs. They want to get paid. Some of them have families, and they have to be afraid of corrupt law enforcement and losing their jobs if they come forward and tell the truth. Then there's the fact that they felt sorry for the Bollinger family. They were not willing to look at what the Bollingers were doing to me. The gang stalking, the threats, the harassment. But the fact is, I have enough evidence to convict at least 100 individuals for gang stalking. The assaults against me are on the cameras in the jails. Now, many of these police officers and the DA's office in Boulder especially, the DA's office in Boulder did not turn over the body cameras to my public pretender, Amanda Bailhash. If I'm able to get a federal case open, I would take down more police officers than the FBI has ever taken down in any single case. Also, that would show that I was telling the truth, and would allow me to take down at least 100 sexual predators and people involved in child trafficking in the state of Colorado and Nebraska. This has been my goal all along. See, unlike these officers who are too cowardly to come forward, and unlike many of these parents who have to be afraid for their children, I don't have any children. I have been fighting this war since 1987. I have wanted to quit so many times. Natalie Bollinger, when she came into my life, became my friend, and I learned her name and actually remembered it, was the day she came into Starbucks and saved me. Saved me from killing myself over the abuse that I was taking at the hands of the Boulder Police Department. Natalie told me she thought about killing herself 100 times. She actually said she was going to kill herself 100 times, and thinking of me was the only reason that she didn't. Many of the witnesses were too afraid to come forward. Many of them because of their families, and some of them I was able to record our phone calls. And that's enough to lend ear to the other things that I had to say. There are other people who I saved it in text messaging on phones that were stolen, like Mandy Hughes being afraid for her family if she came forward publicly, and Alex Furman being afraid for his family if he came forward publicly. The fact is, Ted Bollinger is the monster you guys claimed that I am. Ted Bollinger, with his history of actual abuse, not defending anyone, just getting drunk and harming people. Ted Bollinger may have bodies on his hands. There is a reason that Shelley Campbell is scared shitless of him. There is a reason that Rose Kelly is scared shitless of him. There is a reason that Danica Garner is scared shitless of him. I believe that they may know something, possibly about bodies created by this man. Alycia Bollinger has to decide if she is going to lie to save her family from their crimes, or if she is going to tell the truth to exonerate an innocent man and potentially put herself and her family in prison. I will ask for leniency. I understand that she's an addict. I will ask for leniency for everyone in her family with the exception of Ted, because they are all addicts. I have evidence of this as well. What Ted Bollinger did to Alycia Bollinger and Natalie Bollinger, by raping and molesting them, by having them do drugs, by having Natalie pay off Ted Bollinger's debts with her body. You goddamn right. I've thought about killing myself 100 times. And the thought of getting justice for Natalie and myself and for hundreds of others, potentially thousands of other victims, that's what keeps me going. The hope that I might make a difference and make this world a better place. Alycia Bollinger can help to make this world a better place. Rose M. Kelly can help to make this world a better place. I tried to put my head on the chopping block by playing the part that they wanted me to be, wanted to pretend I am, because it makes everything that they did okay. But the fact is, what they did is not okay. I am not that monster, and the example that Ted has given in the last 2 years since Natalie's death shows a far better example than I ever could. See, here's the difference between me and Ted. Ted doesn't have to fake it. Ted doesn't have to pretend to be a monster. He actually is one. I pretended to be a monster in order to force the police to do their jobs, in order to show and expose every hole, every loophole, every bad corner, false turn, every bit of red tape that is used to prevent victims from getting justice. And the fact is, the Bollinger family are the predators. The Bollinger family and their extended family and friends intentionally took part in gang stalking me, both before and after Natalie's death. The fact that the police refused to do a damn thing about this is not my fault. It is not my choice, and it is not my decision. The fact that police themselves took part in threatening, harassing, and intimidating witnesses, separating me from those who were willing to help, going out of their way to do everything to bury this under the goddamn table, and I am still here. I am still speaking out. I told you I would expose the predators, and I have done so. Many of the people who claimed that they were going to help couldn't help because of their very own addictions. The fact is, the things that I have to say about these people and their addictions are well documented. Me and the reactions that I have are the reactions that you would expect from someone who is a victim of PTSD, a victim of sexual abuse, physical abuse, and mental abuse, as well as neglect. The conversation with Rand Ingersoll and I shows that the Rawlins Police Department did wrong, intentionally did wrong. It shows that the crime that I was forced to plead guilty to, that I am not guilty of. It shows that the public pretender did not do his job. And it shows that my lack of funding and lack of vehicle, which was obviously taken in an illegal fashion, them knowing that there was evidence of child abuse and neglect in that vehicle, and they allowed it to be towed. Glenn Biggs is just as responsible as Dr. Rice and those officers in Rawlins, Wyoming. Also, the evidence of how homeless people are treated and how people are treated when they live in a vehicle by the police nationwide is documented on my YouTube. The actual events and actual encounters. Also, you can see on my YouTube the difference between how officers treat you when there's somebody there versus when you're all alone. That incident in Bristol, Virginia, where the police were going to take me in for suicide watch, you get to notice how they weren't able to do so because Brett Roloff was there. That is the difference between the police going out of their way to do illegal things to prevent you from having an honest day in court, to prevent you from being able to testify by destroying your name and pretending that you're insane. See, if Brett Roloff hadn't been there, they would have dragged me off to a nuthatch. They would have forcibly injected me with drugs. And they would have told the doctors and nurses what outcome they wanted for me, and those doctors and nurses would have given it to them because it's free tax dollars. Alycia Bollinger is a monster. 100%. Until she comes forward. That's my word, and I'm sticking to it. Alycia Bollinger is the predator. She was her sister's predator, her jealousy over her sister. Her sister had better friends. Her sister had friends like me. She was jealous of her sister, obviously, for having a friend like me when we were in Virginia. Alycia wanted to spend all of her time with me while I was in Virginia. Every cigarette break, every lunch break, she wanted to spend with me. She gave me her sister's old broken phone to try to show me that she cared more than her sister. Alycia Bollinger changed over that telephone, changed over the number from my flip phone to that telephone, and put that telephone in her name. Alycia Bollinger insisted on every interaction that Natalie and I had that she be a part of. Meanwhile, I've already proven with evidence that Natalie Bollinger wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with me, and so did I. But Natalie always folded when it came to her sister. She did what her sister wanted because she wanted her sister to be happy. She wanted her sister to love her. Alycia was jealous, despite the fact that Alycia was the popular one. When Natalie Bollinger would get 200 likes on a picture, Alycia Bollinger would get 1,000. Both of them took selfies. If you guys look through Facebook, you can tell that it's a popularity contest. Alycia Bollinger and Natalie Bollinger's lies led to a great many people harming me. I couldn't step away. I couldn't walk away from it. It followed me everywhere I went. Boulder, Colorado, Chapel, Nebraska, everywhere I went. When I tried to go to law enforcement, I got blown off because I have a penis, because I have no money. And police across the United States took part in preventing me from showing evidence, outright stealing evidence, looking the other way, even when I brought them the thief and 2 witnesses. Yes, that actually happened in Tacoma, Washington, and yes, it is documented on my YouTube, including the phone calls afterwards to Tacoma Police Department to turn in that officer, Officer Schneider. And when I tried to turn in that Officer Schneider to his superior officers and to Internal Affairs, which is on video on this YouTube, it was Officer Schneider himself who called me back. After I brought him, the person who stole that evidence, stole my backpack, and brought him 2 witnesses, and he drove off and allowed that thief to walk off. Officer Schneider is the one who called me back. Dispatch put me at risk of being terrorized by Officer Schneider by turning it over to him instead of Internal Affairs and his superior officers. The same as dispatch here in Chapel, Nebraska, just yesterday turned me over to Deputy Hahn, knowing full well that I was attempting to bring charges against Deputy Hahn for his wrongdoing and his part in Natalie's death, and covering it up. Now, do I know for certain that Deputy Hahn is the officer that I spoke with before Natalie's death? No, I do not. But I do know 100% beyond any shadow of a doubt that Deputy Hahn has done everything in his power to cover for the wrongdoing of these officers. Now, due to the fact that gang stalking is a federal offense, it doesn't matter where these judges go. It doesn't matter where these police officers go. It doesn't matter where Joel J. goes. It doesn't matter. Because jurisdiction does not matter in a federal offense and in federal crimes, especially in the case of felonies like this. When a man is forced to break the law because police officers are taking part in the gang stalking, the harassment, you goddamn right they can be pursued across any jurisdictional boundary within the United States. If they go to Alaska, they can be pursued. If they go to Puerto Rico, they can be pursued. If they go to Guam, they can be pursued. If they go to Hawaii, they can be pursued. And I have enough evidence here to prove it. The evidence that'll really hang these son of a bitches is the evidence that they recorded, as well as the situations that they didn't. Why? Because in the situations, especially the ones considering that I did light a fire, and the fact that I did threaten the President of the United States, the fact that they did not record those events, record their interactions with me, and the fact that they intimidated and separated me on multiple occasions from people who are trying to help me shows that these officers are covering up for the wrongdoing of other officers, and that these public pretenders who are friends with one another were covering for each other and for themselves and for those officers and those facilities. These officers assumed my guilt. They also felt sorry for the Bollinger family after what they put Natalie and I through. Yes, they put Natalie through this too. You're goddamn right Natalie did the things that she did to me because she was scared. She was right to be afraid of those people. What I need is help forcing the police to take a look at this. And I may have that help on Monday.